Hi, welcome to Carolina Breast Friends YouTube channel. Today, Eric Cohen, a certified oncology nurse, will be joining us. As a clinical nurse educator, Eric excels at empowering patients and healthcare professionals with valuable knowledge. His holistic approach is always focused on improving the lives of those he serves. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Eric Cohen to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Ashley. I'm thrilled to be here. Today, we're going to be talking about strategies for eating and living well during breast cancer treatment and beyond. Ashley gave me a very nice introduction. Just to let you know, I am an oncology nurse. I also have a master's of science in nutrition and integrative health. I got that because as a patient educator, one of the biggest questions I would get asked is, what can I eat? Is there something that I can eat that will help me along this journey? And I wanted to be able to answer those questions competently. So I got my master's, and now I do a lot of speaking on nutrition for cancer patients. Just a reminder that this presentation is for educational purposes only. It was developed by Puma Biotechnology. That's who I work for. Any questions about specific treatments or your healthcare plan should be discussed with your physician. So today we'll talk about insights into what it takes to change behavior and make a plan. When you want to make a different choice about something, you want to eat more fruits and vegetables. You're supposed to, you do great for a couple of weeks and then you fall off the wagon, right? So we're going to talk about what it takes to make that kind of behavior change. We'll also talk about the barriers that get in the way, and then we'll learn some strategies and hopefully give you some tips to overcome those barriers. So, understanding behavior change. Why can't I just do it, right? I want to do it and I just can't seem to be motivated enough to do it. Spoiler alert, it's not willpower, okay? Willpower is really a very negative term. It is not helpful, and it really isn't willpower. So what is it? On the left-hand side, you see a picture of the brain, and what's highlighted is the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is where your executive functioning skills reside. What are executive functioning skills? It's those things that help you make a plan, organize yourself, put a plan in place, evaluate that plan, adjust that plan. All of those things are executive functioning skills, and they all take place in the frontal lobe. But when you're under stress, the brain stem kicks in, okay? And down near the bottom of the brain is the amygdala. You might have heard this term before. It's called amygdala hijack. Basically, when you're under stress, your amygdala kicks in, and this is your fight, flight, or freeze reflex. And it takes over your frontal lobe. So really, you can't do those executive functioning skills. And a stress doesn't have to be a giant stress like a major car accident or a murder or something like that. Stress is everyday stress that gets in the way. And certainly having a cancer diagnosis is a major stressor that would shut down those executive functioning skills. So before we talk about how to get around that, I just want to kind of level set here with a positive mindset. And this is that there are behaviors that you have in your life. All our behaviors are somewhere along a continuum of essentially good, better, best. In this case, we call them low, functional, optimal. So an example of a behavior that might be on the low scale is that you're eating something that doesn't support your overall well-being or your health, right? Maybe you have a thing for Oreos and you eat, Oreos all day, every day. And that obviously would be on the low end of functioning. Then there are some functional behaviors that you have. And that is, I do some things that are great and support my well-being, but there's more I could do. And then on the optimal side, it's, I'm consistently choosing food that supports my overall well-being. And let me tell you this, no one is ever at optimal 100% of the time. Similarly, no one's ever at the low functioning 100% of the time. We function, and all of these behaviors sort of fluctuate between low functional and optimal states of being. Okay, so I say this because I want you to know that you'll hear a lot of things today that you could put into place. And it's important to know that you don't have to do all of these things. And in fact, I really just want you to take home maybe one thing today that you're going to put into place and move along that continuum. So where do we start? You start wherever you are right now. Okay, so the first thing to do is to ask yourself, what are some of the things that I do well? For instance, I drink a lot of water and I'm very consistent with staying hydrated. Okay, note the things that you're doing well. Then I want you to think about what you could do differently. What are some of the things that you aren't really consistent with? Like, for instance, I often eat under stress or on the run instead of sitting down, making a healthy choice, taking your time to eat, right? So instead of that, you're really eating on the run and under stress. So that might be an example of something you could do differently. And then the last thing is, what's one change I can make for 1 week, right? That's all I want you to do, is to think about one change that you could make and follow that through for a week. You need to write down a goal. So an example of a goal, and it needs to be specific, might be that you want to walk 15 minutes a day for the week. Eat and let me say that if you feel like 15 minutes a day is too much, or you can't do that all at once, it's fine to say, break things up. So instead of all 15 minutes at once, maybe you walk 5 minutes after breakfast, 5 minutes after lunch, and 5 minutes after dinner, right? That would be a smart goal. Then I want you to ask yourself, what might get in the way from me achieving this goal for the week? So if it's walking, maybe it's the weather, right? Maybe it's too hot outside, or maybe one day there's a big storm. So think about those things ahead of time, and think about what are some of the things you could do to get around those barriers. So for instance, maybe instead of walking outside, you need to drive to the mall and you walk in the mall where it's cooler, right? Or where there's no rain. Then at the end of the week, I want you to assess how you did. Did you achieve your goal? And if you did, I want you to reward yourself, right? Acknowledge yourself and really take in that you did it, you put something in place and you followed through with it and you did great. And if you didn't complete your goal, then I don't want you to be judgmental to yourself about not doing it. I just want you to be curious about the things that got in the way. So if it was walking and going to the mall, maybe maybe you have a child who took the car and now you can't get out, or maybe you just felt really, really fatigued that day. Ask yourself in a curious way, not in a judgmental way, what are some of the things that got in the way, and what could you do differently next week? And then I also want you to acknowledge, how does it feel that you tried to do something? Whether or not you did it, you completed it, but how did it feel? How was it different for you having a plan and attempting to put that plan in place? So what are some of the things that get in the way? So it might be that you're too stressed to make changes right now, or you're too tired, don't have the energy. You can't stand for long periods of time. You get confused about making the right food choices. And we'll talk more about this in a few minutes. But there's very legitimate reasons for you to be concerned about whether or not you're making the right food choices. Maybe some side effects are getting in the way. Maybe you have some nausea or diarrhea, or loss of appetite. For some people, maybe transportation was an issue, and obviously, you want to make good choices and have healthy food, but wherever you are, it's just very expensive. So let's talk about a couple of those strategies and what you can do about them. So the stress one is the biggest one, right? The stress one is really the one that controls that executive functioning, and you may be stressed just a little bit and not even realize that you're that stressed, or you might be stressed a lot, and you know that it's getting in the way. If you're feeling stress, or you suspect that you might be under some stress, first thing is to ask your healthcare provider if they have any recommendations for you, right? They might have some recommendations to help you feel less stressed. I want you to track your stress. So I want you to kind of rate it for yourself, again, in a non-judgmental way, on a scale of like 0 to 5, let's say. 5 being I'm under extreme stress, and 0, I don't really feel anything. I don't feel any stress. Track it, and then write down that day. Keep a little journal. Write down that day what your stress level is. And if it's on the high side, I want you to think back over the past 24 to 48 hours. Is there anything that happened? Did you have any sort of experience that might have led to where you're at today with the stress? Think about stress and really any side effect, or any symptom as a teacher. If you have a headache, for instance, think about the last 24 hours. Did anything change to give you that headache? Did you eat anything different? Are you dehydrated? You drank less water? What are things that might be impacting that symptom, especially stress? Ask yourself what you've done in the past. So when you've had other times in your life when you were under a lot of stress, what were the things that helped you through it then? And can you apply them today? Some common stress reduction strategies are things like meditation. Now, I want to be clear about this. You don't have to have a formal meditation practice. If you're feeling stressed, sit in a chair with your back supported, your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap. Eyes can be open or closed, whatever your comfort level is. And do some slow, deep breathing. Do it for 5 minutes. Do it for 10 minutes if you can. Help lower your heart rate. That's what you're after. And that is a great stress reduction strategy. It doesn't have to be guided imagery or, a formal meditation practice. It could also be prayer. For a lot of people, prayer is really reducing their stress level. It acts the same way as deep breathing and meditation. Physical activity is another thing that helps reduce stress levels. And then, of course, social support, right? Making sure that you have people around, someone that you can vent to, friends that make you laugh or just sit with you. But having social support is a real stress reducer. Okay, moving on. I'm too tired. I don't have the energy to really take care of myself very well. So in terms of food, think about trying to create a meal plan for the week. Again, it doesn't have to be a big formal thing where you plan out breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Maybe it's just breakfast. I want to plan out what I'm going to eat for breakfast for the next week. And then, make a list and shop for just those things. Try to shop the outer aisles of the grocery store, around the edges, right? The walls of the grocery store first. Shop there first. Where? Why? Because that's where you're going to see the produce, right? The fresh fruits and vegetables and the meat counter and the fish counter, all along the outside aisles. Those are really the healthy things. That's where you want to shop first. And then if you have more energy, you can go up and down some aisles. But avoid the aisles first if you're having a lot of stress, because the healthy food is around the edges. Shop with a friend. I think that's a great strategy. There's a handout, and I will send this to Ashley so that she has it, an email, and she can email you, and you can look at these things that I'm suggesting here, so you don't have to write them all down. Along the lines of still being, I'm too tired, and now you have to cook or prepare food. Here are some ideas. Sit down to prepare your food. You don't have to stand at the stove. You don't have to stand at the counter. You can sit down. You can purchase pre-chopped frozen vegetables. Those are great, right? The chopped stir-fry vegetable mixtures are fantastic. You can just throw them in a pot and cook them very quickly, and that's another way to lower your, if you have a low energy level. Try to make a batch of things. Like if you like to have rice, and rice is a staple in your house, make the rice at the beginning of the week, put it in the fridge, and then dole out servings from it for the week, right? On a Sunday, just cook up a pot of rice that you'll use for the rest of the week. Trying to think of doing things in batches can also be a way of saving energy. So, I get confused about making the right food choices. And I said earlier that there's legitimate reason for you to be confused. Since World War II, really, but certainly over the last 30, 40 years, you're getting all kinds of messages about what's healthy and what you should eat. And 95% of those messages are coming from people who are trying to sell you something, right? And it's not about what is a real healthy choice. It's about buy my product, and let me become a billionaire, right? That's really what's happening. And then there's the government, right? Which makes it even more confusing, like saying, one month they say that eggs are bad, and the next week they say, oh, they're good, and now they say, oh, they're bad again. And so who knows? Can I eat eggs? Is my cholesterol, going to suffer if I eat eggs every day? It's very difficult to make healthy decisions with all of the messages that you've gotten over the years. So I want to give you a strategy, a foundation for making your own healthy food choices all the time, right? Without having to look something up to really investigate whether it's healthy or not. I'm going to give you a foundation for making healthy choices. It's really simple. I call it doing things that are evolutionarily familiar. What do I mean by evolutionarily familiar? That is the things that we as human beings, as a species, evolved with, right? So, for instance, the Earth evolved with the sun. Physiologically, for us as human beings, we have a tie to that, and that is, you know that when the sun goes down, you're supposed to sleep, and when the sun rises, that's when you're supposed to be awake and do things, right? Now, when natural light hits your eyelid in the morning, you get a burst, the signals in your brain, a burst of cortisol. Cortisol is the hormone that gives you energy to get through the day. Melatonin is the hormone that helps you sleep at night. When you get that burst of cortisol in the morning, so let's just say it's around 6 a.m., cortisol begins to rise, and it rises and peaks around noon, and then it starts to drop and fall off. And by 6 p.m., cortisol is at its lowest level, and melatonin kicks in. And melatonin peaks about midnight, right? And this is the hormone that helps you sleep. And then melatonin begins to fall off. And by 6 a.m., melatonin is at its lowest. You get that hit of natural light, and your cortisol kicks in again, right? That's how it's supposed to work. That's what's evolutionarily familiar. Now, in terms of food, what's evolutionarily familiar? Vegetables, fruit, meat and eggs, grains, all evolutionarily familiar, things that we evolved with. What's not evolutionarily familiar? Really simple. Anything that's in a shape that doesn't exist in nature is not evolutionarily familiar, right? So a Cheerio is in a shape that is not evolutionarily familiar, and that's not health supportive. It doesn't matter what they tell you in the marketing, that it's heart healthy, they use whole grains. It's in a shape that doesn't exist in nature. It's not healthy. It's really, really simple. Now, I'm also going to say this. It doesn't mean you can't ever have something that's in a shape. It just means that when you're trying to eat more healthy foods, those are the foods you want to avoid, right? Or eat less of, eat occasionally, eat as a treat, as opposed to a main meal. Now, at the end, we'll go have questions. I'll allow for questions, and we can go through a lot more of this. But I just want to move on for sake of time on this presentation. So, ask your healthcare team if they recommend any sources for you to look at when you're going through a diagnosis of cancer. If they have a nutritionist available, make an appointment with a nutritionist. I think that's a great thing to do. Again, shop the outer aisles at the grocery store and look for breast cancer specific nutrition information. This slide, and this will be in your handout, is really sort of just meant to give you an idea of how to do a substitution, right? So you know that eating a lot of fried foods is not terribly health supportive. But you like the crunch. What are some ways you can get around that? Maybe it's using an air fryer or steaming your vegetables, right? That will make them crunchy and sort of satisfy that feeling. Instead of soda, using things like flavored water or flavored seltzers, I think are fine as long as there's no added sugar. So this is just an idea of some substitutions you can make. I told you earlier to keep a journal, and I think that's helpful, is to, sort of keep a journal, a track of how you're feeling in terms of stress. And then what are some of the things that maybe increased your stress, and what are some of the things that you can do that will lower your stress. Also, journals like that are great to share with your healthcare team. Communicating with your doctor, at making sure that they are answering all of your questions. And if they're not, ask someone on your healthcare team for those answers, right? You're entitled to ask questions at your appointments and get answers until you understand what's going on. Bring a friend or a relative to help you take notes. If you need a translator, of course, ask for one. And again, share what's going on with you. Share your journals. Keep things simple. Just make one change for 1 week. Ask yourself in advance, what might stop me from accomplishing this goal? What's missing? Is there a process I need to put in place? Is there a resource I need? Maybe I need new shoes to do the walking, whatever it is, sort of think about those things ahead of time, and then work your plan. And then when you do it well, congratulate yourself. And if you have trouble, just be curious about it. Don't be judgmental about it, and pick up again the next day or the next week. So that's the end of the formal presentation. This is just some national organizations that have some good information. And again, this will be in the handouts that I sent to Ashley. At this point, I think we can conclude the recording. Ashley, I'll turn it back to you.